OK, it hasn't worked. Matthew Lesh.
Well, unfortunately, I think that's a very simplified view. I think we have to remember that the water system was privatised in the first place because there was really no appetite from government to do the large amount of investment spending that would be necessary to replace the aging Victorian infrastructure and to meet new environmental standards. And since privatisation, there has been literally hundreds of billions of pounds invested in the system. It's been far more invested in the system than has been taken out in dividends. And as a result of the fact that there has been all this investment, the system is far more efficient, means we're paying £120 each lower bills, according to Ofwat. Leakage is down, supply interruptions are down, low pressure is all down. Ultimately, if you wanted to nationalise the whole system, it would cost something like £90 billion. And then that would just be £90 billion to take over the infrastructure. And then you would also have to spend hundreds of billions more of public money, of taxpayer money, likely borrowed money, on trying to improve the system. It's not a costless exercise to go down this path of nationalisation. So I think we have to be really careful here, thinking, oh, well, everything would suddenly magically be better off if we could nationalise the system. In truth, it's just a very expensive process to deal with sewage.
Yeah, it's easy to make this sound like it's some kind of radical proposal, but ultimately it's common sense. Less than 10% of cities worldwide have some degree of privatisation in their water systems. We don't even have to look to Europe. We can just look to Scotland. You know, we heard about investment going into the English water systems under privatisation. Actually, Scottish Water, which is publicly owned, has put in more money. There will be 28...
I mean, it does sound like, as much as you say, Matthew, that there has been money going in. I mean, that all we hear about all the time, hundreds of pollution incidents, and the water companies being in debt. It's not just Thames Water. Can you understand how angry people are? And you know, many people think this is a national scandal and they shouldn't be made to pay 40, 50, 60% more because all these billions that are coming in through the bills that we're paying is going to shareholders.
Yeah, look, in truth, we are hearing a lot more about sewage leak, and that's because for the first time they've actually been counted. The reason why you hear about this concern is because only beginning in 2015 was there any counting of the amount of sewage leaks, and only last year was there 100% coverage. So it's unsurprising that there's been increases. There's also been a lot of rain. The truth is, if we want to improve the old system that unfortunately was built in a way that combines rainwater with sewage that leads to these discharges when there is a lot of excess rain, it's just a very expensive process. It doesn't matter whether that's ultimately going to come from higher bills or government borrowing. Either way, it's all of us paying for it. On this point, though, about, well, if only we just got rid of any kind of dividends, or we only got rid of any kind of employee bonuses, and that would suddenly solve it, that's a relatively small amount of money. And also, if you don't have those incentives, you're going to have to pay for in other ways. You know, it's not the government has to pay to borrow money in the same way that these private companies have to pay, and they're taking on a risk.
Eleanor?
Yeah, so it's about £72 billion in dividends across the whole water system since privatisation, actually. So I don't think we are talking about small amounts of money. And I think the other thing to say here as well is that Thames Water has been rated uninvestable by investors, and one of the big critiques they have is the fact that it's being subject to all these fines, all these things that the public is crying out for accountability. Ultimately, it's just common sense. If you're an investor putting your money in somewhere, you're not doing that as a charity out of the goodness of your heart. You're doing it because you want to see a return on your investment. So those investors are going to say, well, if you want stronger regulation from Ofwat, if Ofwat's going to actually go after these companies that are polluting, that's going to make it a less attractive investment. There's just a really fundamental tension here between trying to regulate private investment and trying to make this an attractive system to investors to put their money in. The only way to solve that tension really is public ownership that can actually mean that the system is run on the logic not of profit, but of what is best for all of us and best for our water. That's such a vital service for all.
OK, Matthew, quick response to that.
Well, look, profit is what encourages companies to get down costs and improve efficiencies. It's the regulator decides how much is invested in the system. In fact, the regulator also decides how much profit they're allowed to take out. So that's all a matter for Ofwat. If we want them to be less profitable, they could be.
So there's a question of Ofwat's credibility here then, really?
Well, the Ofwat does have difficult kind of trade-offs to make here. You make them less profitable, then you can't attract as much investment into the system. If you can't put up bills, you can't reduce the amount of sewage. I think it's all about trade-offs. And those trade-offs don't go away once you nationalise it. The government still has all the same problems in terms of trying to improve the efficiency and in trying to get the amount of borrowing. But the problem is when the government owns it is they actually never invest enough. And we saw this because the government wants to invest in schools, it wants to invest in healthcare. It never seems to want to
we haven't seen it because water companies have been privatised here for 35 years. And, you know, it's 85 billion, I think it is, has been withdrawn by investors and not put back into the system is what we're hearing. Both of you, thank you very much.